Hi, it's Matt with Trout Soup. Today my wife Jessica and I are going to go into the Wild Basin and fish the North St. Vrain Creek. The North St. Vrain Creek in the Wild Basin area is situated in the southeast corner of Rocky Mountain National Park. There are some regulations here. No dogs allowed. This area is a heavily trafficked area, so if you want peace and solitude, don't come here in the summertime. That's why we've come in the fall. Upon arrival, my wife already has a brook trout on the line. She's becoming quite a good fly fisher woman. I found quite a good perch to scope out the fishing and the water. I think I'll sit here for a little while and watch my wife fish. Here my wife is fan casting this large pool of water. This is a great way to cover a big area of water quickly. Fan casting is simply casting out into different directions and covering all the different water. Cast to the right, then the middle, and then the left. Here's a juicy looking pool just downstream of Lower Copeland Falls. Now this is 2 times speed, and I'm going to be casting my line out here and slowly twitching it in to create a little bit of action. Caddisflies make this action on the water, and if you notice, I'm doing this downstream to imitate a fluttering caddisfly. It does help to pay close attention to your surroundings, which has kind of been difficult for me, with the camera in my hand and the fly rod in the other. But if you notice, I'm fishing out that deeper pool area, and there's a little brook trout that's swimming right in front of me. See if you can spot him. By the time I could spot this little cruiser, it was a little too late. My fly was behind him the whole time. And I knew that if I took a swing with my fly rod, the motion of my fly rod would actually scare him away. I did get this cast in the mainstream right above him, and he comes hovering up into your screen, and he just looks at that fly and just kind of laughs. When you're fishing these small streams, be on the lookout for these little pools. These little pocket pools are great holding water for trout. This pool at Lower Copeland Falls represents everything a dry fly fisherman dreams of. A great tail-out section, good pools of water streaming in, a shallow rock shelf, a submerged tree. And so after about 10 minutes of me fly fishing this whole section with not a bite, I went ahead and decided to move across to the other side. This was a good move on my part, because as you're going to see in the first section of this pool on the other side, I'm going to get a take. But I missed him. In fall fishing, a lot of times there's quite a bit of debris floating in the water, so sometimes you have to use a slightly larger fly than you normally would. The small cutthroat trout that make their way into this section of the North St. Vrain in the Wild Basin come down from Sand Beach Lake, Ouzel Lake, Finch Lake, and maybe even Thunder Lake, all of which are about 4.5 to 6 miles away. Now these could possibly be Colorado greenback cutthroat trout, but it's hard to tell. when you're bushwhacking around these small creeks, I'd recommend carrying your fly rod with the rod tip facing backwards. Now my wife dry fly fishes this section of the water beautifully. She uses minimal casts, long drifts. She gets that rod tip pointed directly to the water. Good job. There was nary a trout nor a rise in this section, so we decided to head up above Upper Copeland Falls. I've found in other small streams and even bigger rivers like the Cache La Poudre that in the fall fishing, many times the trout will migrate and also congregate in the larger, deeper pools, getting ready for the cold winter. My wife Jess fished this pool, a lovely looking little spot, with a couple of little inlets and tributary streams flowing into it, to no avail. Must not be any trout in there. Some trout are uncatchable, not because they've seen a million flies necessarily, but because they're hiding underneath that tree, and that presents an impossible cast. Moving upstream from Hunter's Creek at the westernmost parking lot, there are 6 more feeder streams that feed this crystal clear, beautiful North Fork of the St. Vrain River. And from these waters that feed into this crystal clear stream, they branch out into over 25 lakes in this wild basin area. The high lakes themselves, well, we'll have to explore those next year. Remember, when you're wet wading downstream, your shadow is going to hit those fish first and most likely spook them. We're heading downstream just past the confluence of Sand Beach Creek and the North Fork of the St. Vrain. Now the confluence running in is just a small trickle. Oh yeah! When you're casting upstream into a pool, a quick hook set is almost always necessary. Shortly after my wife released maybe her 6th or 7th brookie, I noticed a very strong, musky smell. Now this female is about 15 feet downstream of me. She's taking in some water, and at this point I hear something to my right. Second female moose comes upstream. She gets to within about 7 feet of me. Now the hair on the back of her neck is standing straight up, but she's continuing to eat. Her ears aren't flared backwards, so I don't think she's too mad. As long as I stay calm and quiet, I'll be all right. Just when I thought she was turning to look at me, I heard something to my left. Now at this point, my wife has packed up her gear and jumped about 30 yards upstream. And she's looking out for me. She wants me to get out of there. These 3 moose are all ready to eat right in the area that I'm standing. This little island where the river forks around is exactly where they went to feed. So we got up high and made sure they were behind us before heading downstream. We followed this game trail right alongside the river, and there were plenty of signs that moose were present. With a gorgeous afternoon sun glow, my wife didn't waste any time catching her next brook trout. And then the hatch was on. Miniature version of October caddis. How many rises in this section of water can you see with your naked eye? I counted 6. See how many you can see. I'd mentioned earlier in the video that many times in the fall, trout will congregate into the deep pools. These are 2 deep pools that both my wife and I fished. Guess how many fish were in these pools? Give up? 0. It just shows you that no matter how much knowledge you have or experience on these small streams and creeks, each one has its own identity. Sometimes the fish are in the shallows. As I reminisce on these waters today, I think of all the brook trout that my wife caught today, the 3 moose that we encountered. And from which one of those lakes, those high mountain lakes, did that greenback cutthroat trout come from? He must have swam a long way. We sure hope you enjoyed coming along with us today to the Wild Basin, and we'll see you again soon.
So how do you feel about your guide today?